Okay, right. Okay, Neil. So I think thank you first of all for agreeing to do this interview, and it's 21st of July, isn't it, for Neil's interview? What I'd like to ask you, please, is a little bit more about your understanding of creativity in your questionnaire. You've already said, using some of the skills, but has your understanding of creativity changed? Maybe think about before the module, after the module, and now, having been at work for 3 years?
Well, before the module happened, Jan, I was of the opinion that this would be something totally different to what I've ever done before, hence why I chose it. And during the module, as you may remember, a lot of the students did struggle because obviously it was very different to a set format of an academic module, where before we would obviously be researching and writing, where this was more creative alongside the more traditional way of learning.
Right.
So we had barriers and we had confrontations with each other, and basically I felt very out of my depth during the module. But after I'm reflecting back on what I've actually learned throughout, because sometimes when you're submerged in a subject, it's very difficult to see outside of the bigger picture.
Yes.
So now I can actually go on into the workplace and actually use some of the things I've learned in the module. I now can actually have almost like flashbacks to when I was in the module and thinking, this is what I need to overcome, and I've done that before.
That's
and
brilliant.
Using different ways to actually help the students, because obviously they're learning in their second language. It almost gives me a different dimension and a different route for them to actually explore. So it's not all about traditional learning, it's all about using the tools around you, and I felt the creativity in general and the module actually allowed me the freedom and the ability to actually explore that side of it. So that is my understanding of creativity and how it's helped me in my career, and actually I still use it today. So I can only I can't talk highly enough of it.
Oh, well, thank you very much. That's really, really useful. Thank you. And what about number 2 then? About helped you to become a more creative practitioner or educator rather than teacher, because you are teaching, aren't you? I mean, it's
in a non-traditional way, I am teaching. I find my role as a pastoral teacher to the students. I find a lot of the students that I work with have never left their home country, let alone come to a second country. So using the processes of creativity to actually look at the bigger picture, then unpack it, I've found invaluable in the way that I've engaged with the students, engaged them with what I'm doing, because sometimes they come from a very traditional rote type environment. So basically,
interesting reading that.
Because their whole pedagogy in typical countries is I'm the student, I sit, I listen. So when I'm trying to work with them to actually explore different ways to do things, I often have to overcome similar barriers to what I did in the module, but I'm seeing it from their position as well. So I can then reflect and empathise with them that actually I've done this and I've come through it, and hopefully you will benefit from it. So for me, using it in my profession is invaluable, really. It just gives me another tool in the toolkit, and I think it's all about building up your tools. So if something's not working, try something different. If that's not working, having the confidence, and I think it is the confidence as a practitioner to actually be able to do that.
Thank you, Neil. Number 3, I think you've already addressed, really. It's the idea of developing personally and professionally, which is what you've already talked about, so we'll leave that one. Number 4, again, if you've got anything specific to say here, you've already mentioned about the rote learning, but aspects of the module encourage you to incorporate creative opportunities into your, not lessons, into your practice, really. Is there anything else you've already mentioned about the rote learning, but anything you can add specifically that you do, just an example?
Let's have a look.
That maybe you could share next week in the focus group.
Absolutely.
So we share things. It's difficult. I mean, it's you probably do it all the time without realising it. Really.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, really, without actually thinking about it exactly. I do, because I have a non-traditional teaching role. My role is very open, and I can basically work individually. So I'm left to my own devices to be able to
Which is
actually,
good, isn't it?
unlike a lot of practitioners are sometimes bound by certain teaching styles or expectations. I'm not, as long as I see the positivity in what I'm doing in relaying that to the students, especially in life skills, which I am trying to teach them as well. So I will think about that in readiness for the focus group, because I'm sure, like you said before, there is numerous things that I could
things that we could apply. You know, they could transfer into whatever job you're doing in education, really, which is the whole point of the BA course, isn't it? Really, the a different approach to assessment is a thorny issue, really. I mean, again, you're not assessing your students, presumably, but
no, and like I said on my comment, whilst I agree with the comment, it's very difficult for me to have a direct input into that question, because I don't formally test them, and I don't formally. All I'm doing is giving them skills, like study skills, which help them along with the assessment. So to me, having different approaches to assessments is invaluable, and I think certainly from working with international students, it's another way to test them, which will benefit them, because they're obviously writing in their second language if there is other assessments. And I'm pleased to say that Into do offer the students presentation skills and ways to actually show their knowledge by actual non-traditional ways. So I know it happens in the centre, but I certainly agree that it is important
to have different ways. I mean, the fact that the paradox, of course, with doing the creativity module is that at the end of 12 weeks we had to assess you, and you had that mark was very significant towards your final degree. I don't know if you could just expand on that a bit more, really, because I mean, in an ideal world, that module would have been great not having to assess you, but we did have to.
I think it. My opinion has stayed the same than what it was 3 years ago when we did the assessment. It's a case of we are in an education establishment, and unfortunately, in an ideal world, we would have loved it all to be very, very relaxed and but we were there to do a job. It's almost similar to working in everyday life, where you have objectives and outcomes, and if you don't meet those objectives and outcomes, unfortunately you don't stay in your job. So I've always said about the degree being my job while I was here for 3 years, and as a direct consequence of that, I always knew that the module had to be marked by an assessor. So I personally still feel there's no way around that, because certainly with the creative part of the module, it was very difficult, because it's all very subjective to the individual who's looking at it. But unfortunately, that's the beast, isn't it? At the end of the day, there's no way around it. And whilst as a module leader and somebody who's taken part in the module, it should be some way different. That's not realistic. No, not at all.
Okay, and it was about the process rather than the product.
Absolutely.
Which is good, isn't it?
And I think trying to get your head around the process and understanding that you're not being marked at the end, you're being marked on the process. It's almost very difficult to see that at the beginning, because all your other modules are all very build, and then something at the end. Rather than this, in some ways you're being assessed, and it's almost like having an assessment each week that basically add them all up over 12 weeks, then that's your mark type of thing, rather than having anything at the end. So
okay, thanks Neil, very, very useful, thank you. And the idea of providing children, adults, learners with a creative learning environment, what do you think about that? I mean, even if you're not in your job now, what do you think about teachers? I mean, the idea of having, and I don't mean just nice things on the wall, but also nice positive environment. Does that help? Is it important?
Yeah, for me personally, being a hands-on type of person, I'm very keen to actually encourage my international students to do things which are outside their comfort zone. Because I found over the last 3 years that they rely heavily on the fact that they are expected to read a lot and to write a lot, and that's about it. They sometimes forget that the whole part of learning is to engage yourself verbally and creatively in that module to actually be able to fully understand it. For me, encouraging the importance of providing children with that type of learning environment is second to none, because unless you actually feel the subject, unless you feel the module and your subject, it's very difficult to actually fully understand it by simply reading it in your second language. So for me, any new experiences is a positive thing, regardless of how or what they are.
Yeah.
I just think the actual process is more important than basically the final essay type thing at the end, which everyone, regardless of where you're from in the world, you always look at the mark at the end of the day.
Yes,
we're all human, aren't we?
We're all human,
absolutely.
That's the thing, thank you. I am going to leave a bit on visual art, because I think what I've done, Neil, is trying to take on too many things in one, too many aspects. You've given me a response to that, so thank you very much. What I'd like to do now, please, is just to go back to the sheet I've given you, where there are some very general kind of questions leading up to the big one, number 8, which is the wider picture, which we could probably happily talk about for 5 hours.
I'm sure we could, but
I have a feeling we might be on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
But PGCE you didn't do.
I didn't do. I went straight into industry.
That's what I thought.
So basically, that's
those two were really irrelevant. But is there anything you did, maybe after the module, that helped prepare you for creative practice?
The only thing I would say, because I didn't do the PGC, I went straight into industry.
Yeah.
It was a case of giving me the confidence to try. The module gave me the confidence to actually try something outside of the norm.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is the only thing I would say. And I know people who did the PGC were more hands-on and more creative. But for me, it's all about just using what I've learned to actually put in place structures and processes in my workplace to actually allow me to do that.
I mean, just like your knowledge of PGC and your knowledge of your friends and teaching, is there anything you feel could be added to it? Anything you feel as an outsider? It would be interesting to hear your view.
I'm just trying to think, really. The creativity module was very helpful in the context of it was there to prepare you to actually try and challenge in some ways what you were already learning throughout different modules. So in the other modules it's all very traditional learning, but with the creativity module I felt that it was very or it was the opposite to what we were learning before. So from my friends, they have actually told me that whilst the creativity module was beneficial, I think they would have wanted more sort of not life skills is the wrong word, but professional skills to actually, yes, it's great to be in the art studio doing,
yes.
But it was almost like trying to connect that in practice with your future career.
Exactly.
And whilst not everyone in the module would want to go into teaching, it's very interesting. It would have been maybe good for the artist maybe to actually incorporate in some ways sort of a very loose lesson plan or some objectives in it to say basically you could use this with this group of people or this group of people, working with old people, learning disabilities, that type of thing, and basically trying to trigger it into your head that basically the connections, because to me it's all about using connections to go, that's what that could be used for. So I don't know if that's possible, but I think that would potentially be more beneficial in the arts, because sometimes I felt, and several other people who aren't from a creativity background were very, oh my god, this is overwhelming.
Yes, quite.
Whereas if there was a little bit, I know it defeats the whole object of being creative, but if there was a little bit of connections that you could do this with that, then in your own mind you could potentially take yourself down a certain path, and maybe that would give you the confidence to actually
see the relevance of it. Maybe actually while they were talking to you, talk about what your career aspirations are.
I
knew them, but they probably
and
didn't
having
know.
the dialogue and having that relationship with people, so that the artist, because the group is very small, the artist could actually learn to know what individual wants, and then in their heads they could go, right, if you're in an art gallery, you could do something like this, or
that's a brilliant idea.
But I don't know if that's possible.
We've got 2 artists now.
Oh, have you?
We haven't got Brian
Wow.
Hall. We've got 2 Becca Sturgis, who you probably remember at the same, but also Isabella Martin, who's a very young, sort of dynamic person. So they have got 2 now. So and they do more group critique. So it has moved on, but I certainly take the point about that. And some people have suggested that PGCE could be developed by having a module, not a module because it's too long, but something within the PGC on this. Difficult.
It's difficult for you. Well, absolutely, because you don't want to like we all know with any research, you could cover so many different subjects. but unless you pinpoint it, it's very difficult. It's the same with that. You don't want to go in and do a half a day session on creativity because that's not going to give you any justice, and everyone's going to come out scratching their heads going, that's a waste of time. Well, we both know that over a period of time, that's when you start to learn.
That's true.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. How do you think creativity is viewed by your colleagues in the two?
I would say the support staff find it quite strange because the support staff are there from a non-academic background.
Yes, of course.
They just see me sometimes doing things and they look at me and scratch their head and go, what the hell are you doing, Neil? But more the teaching side of it and the management side are just keen for me just to get the point across.
I see.
It's almost leave Neil to do whatever he wants, and if I can be supported by them, they're more than happy to encourage it. So I haven't had any negatives
really
at all, which is really positive.
That's very good, because we've obviously in the teaching world, but it's completely different. And is it included in your kind of own CPD? And have you had the chance to share any things with your colleagues?
It's very difficult for me to share anything that I do because I am one of two, if that makes sense. And whilst I'm in the bigger picture part of the team, I'm very much, unfortunately, the teaching side is here, and I'm left to deal with anything non-academic, if that makes sense.
It does,
At the moment, I'm working because as hopefully you know, Into offers A levels to international students and home students. So I come more into that because obviously that's more of a 16 to 18 sort of age group. So I work closer with the A level teachers than I do the other teachers. Because they're more subject matter. A-level students, whilst it's subject matter as well, there's a lot of pastoral care as well, and PSHE and that type of thing, which I will get involved in. So I do actually do a lot of that with them. So I see that as a positive.
Great. Thank you very much. Is there anything for number 5 that you've seen yourself? I mean, again, it's not necessarily just teaching, but again, you say you're one of 2. But have you had any other people who've inspired you? People you think, that's quite good. Probably something you might need to focus.
Yeah, it might be something. Because I don't want to just give you, because I don't think it will do your research any give it any strength if I suddenly get one off the head. So I will make a note of that one and think about that for the focus group next week.
And really, I'm thinking about what encourages or creative learning in your situation and any barriers, because obviously teachers are saying things like the national curriculum and the fact that it's a test performance-driven world.
I think
it's different for you.
Well, you say it's different. Yes, it is different, but it's not different because our students, in some ways, have more. What's the word I'm looking for? More pressure on them to perform in some ways. Because whilst the national curriculum does actually put in barriers for testing. There is other options for them. Once they get to Into, their object is to come to the UEA and they have to pass a test. If they don't pass the test, they're not coming to the UEA and they have to go to a lesser university in the UK. So that's not there. So for them, the pressure is almost more than what the national testing is because they have one shot at it. And because with the UK government's laws and regulations about visas, you only get one attempt, and if you don't progress, it's very so whilst I see the national curriculum puts in testing into the curriculum at various points, there isn't that in the back of your mind that if I don't pass this course and progress, I'm not staying in the UK. So
it's much more serious.
Well, it's like the meat end of the sandwich. It's almost very frightening for them because they know, and for me then to come in and in some ways I don't want to be rude to the subject, but it's almost. They look at me sometimes when I come in quite fluffy and go, right, we're going to try this and that. To them, they scratch their heads at the beginning and they go, Neil, I just want to pass this course. I don't want to know what this is or that is. And it's almost for me to get over that barrier to say this will help you. If you connect with the subject or this, it's going to help you in the long. So for me, I think these students under an enormous amount of pressure.
They are indeed, yes.
Which I would never be able to comprehend.
No.
So that's some of the problem.
I've read quite a lot about that in the press, about I think was a Korea place where they do this really intensive testing and
absolutely.
so on. Yeah.
And you've got pre-sessional students up there, and they've worked all their life to get to do their masters here at the UEA. And as you know, through the school, these students have got 12 weeks to get to a level of English that's required of them, or they're going home.
Yeah,
that's a hell of a lot.
It's a real cramming sort of.
Absolutely,
And families, paying a lot of money to get them.
And this misconception, I know it's a subject matter, but this misconception that all international students come from the milk of land and honey, it's not true.
No.
A lot of these people, especially Chinese people, they have one child.
Yes.
They've saved all their life for that one child. They're investing all their money in one child. They don't have money.
No.
These are like quite poor people in their country.
Stakes are high, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, and that goes on to the student because they're expected to support the family when they're done. So a lot of people
like a family investment.
Yeah, it is. It's exactly like that.
Yeah.
It is a family investment, and if the student doesn't perform or feel like they're performing, that's when we have serious mental health issues and different things like that,
and
which we have to pick
serious,
up.
Which I've read
Absolutely,
about. That's terrible. That's incredibly interesting. Thanks, Neil. It's so interesting to talk to you because it is so different from the teaching
I suppose it
world,
would be,
But there are parallels, which is what education is all about. And number 8 about the wider picture. I suppose things have changed very much recently for you. Anything about government policies of restricting what you do, or?
Well, I'm lucky. Like I said, I think it'd be interesting to ask that question with other people from different sectors, because to me, mine aren't so much government policies restricting me from a creative point of view in learning or teaching. Mine is the creativity. Or not the creativity, but government policy to put so much pressure on these students, like I've just discussed.
Yeah.
So whilst I have my own personal opinions on the national curriculum and the direction that the government are potentially taking us, considering now they're going back to grammar schools and potentially like that, and I'd imagine creativity doesn't really focus highly in grammar school arrangements at all. I could sit with you for the next 5 hours talking about that. So I wouldn't want to do that.
That'd be something we can pursue next week.
Absolutely, it'll be an interesting conversation around the table because, like we've just had this conversation, I will be coming from a totally different point of view. But hopefully, it is a circle where somebody will go one way and I'm going the other, and hopefully we all meet in the middle, because at the end of the day there is a human being at the centre of it.
Shared values and principles.
Unfortunately, some people forget that there is somebody in the middle who is breathing and living and sleeping and has feelings, and I think sometimes policies and don't take that into account.
Get the notion of self altogether.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah, that is
Thank
true.
you, Neil.
But no, that's fine.
That's really good. Really interesting answers. Is there anything else you'd like to say? Obviously we'll say more next week. Is there anything else you'd like to say? You know, these research things, there's always anything else that...
It's almost like a job interview, isn't it? So what questions have you got for us?
Absolutely, because I don't want to miss anything out.
No. Now I know that we're going to have a focus group next week. That'll give me the opportunity to think in more depth, to give more examples rather than giving my opinion, because I think it's important for other people and for you and for me to learn from everybody else. So I haven't got anything to further to add to what I've already done, but next Tuesday should be fine.
I'll stop it.